I'm short. Hi, my name's Heidi. I'm an alcoholic. First, I just want to say thank you to the group. I want to say thank you to Lisa. She took me on this tremendous hike today. We got to see the redwoods, and gosh, you guys live in a beautiful part of the country, you know. And I want to thank Carrie for picking me up. This has just been a fantastic weekend, and it is not beyond me to know how blessed I am to be able to do this kind of stuff. Like, if you had told me I would have been doing this 17 years ago, I would have thought you were absolutely crazy and out of your mind. Because 17 years ago, I was in a jail cell. So there would have never been a way that I would have been here. You know, that just did not even seem possible. I do have a home group. It is the Welcome Home Group. I loved greeting. It was so nice to be able to shake most of your hands here tonight. That is one of the things that we do at our home group. It's called Welcome Home Group because we say welcome home when people walk in. I have a sobriety date. It is June 10th, 2009. Neither of those things did I pick. I'll tell you, my home group came about, which you'll hear, I moved back to Pennsylvania. And the home group that I have is about a block from my house. There was 2 home group members that came to my house and they said, "You're coming with us, you have a new home group." And I was like, all right, whatever. It worked out pretty well for me. You know, it's been great the last 5 years. My sobriety date, I also did not pick out my sobriety date. And it has worked out, you know, pretty well for me thus far too. It seems to me that the things that I don't pick out, the things I don't plan, the things I don't manage are the things that are the best things in my life, you know? I grew up in a small town. I grew up with parents who were unbelievably loving and kind. I mean, my parents have been married for 52 years. They're still together and they're still amazing. But there was something in me that felt different. I felt apart from. I remember my mom used to tell this story. She would tell a story about how she couldn't get pregnant and they were going to adopt a baby, and then she got pregnant with me. And then she would go on to say, and then I was sick every single day of my pregnancy. I was pregnant with you. And then I go to have you, and I was in labor for 3 days, and then they did a cesarean. Like, it was the most painful thing ever. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then she goes on to say, and the doctor came in, she was holding me, and the doctor said to her, "Would you do it again?" And my mom said, "Absolutely, I would do it again." And what I heard was, "I'll do it again because you've been trouble since before the day you were born." What my mom meant was, I went through all of this pain and suffering, and I would do it 100 times again if I could just have you in my life. That's what my mom meant. My problem is I don't always hear what people say, you know, like I hear through the filter of whatever's going on in my mind at that point in time. So, we're honest with each other, right? Like, there are times in my life today that my husband will say to me, "Repeat back to me what you just heard," because I know I didn't say what you just heard, right? And so, because I see things like it's this filter of self is the way that I see things. And my filter of self sees things in the way that how I think that you think about me. That's my biggest thing. I want to know, I think that I know what you are thinking about me at this, you know, not right now, but in the past. That's what I would have thought. So much so, I love to run. I got up this morning and I ran on the great trail in Danville, and I've been training for a race. But when I was in middle school, I ran a race and I came in second. Which I'll tell you what, if I came in second for a race today, there would be a banner in town telling people I was second. But back then I came in second and I thought, I can't run again. I can't be on the team. I can't do this because what will people think of me that I came in second? Like, if I couldn't be perfect, then if I couldn't be first, I didn't want to do it. Like, I don't know why I never thought you could practice, you know, like you could try to get better, but I had such a fear of what I thought people thought of me that I set this huge standard, which meant that I didn't do a lot of things because I was just too afraid. One of the things that I didn't do is when I graduated from high school, I didn't go to college because I didn't want to live in close quarters with other women because they scared me. And I was afraid that they would get to know me. And if they got to know me, there was no way that they could like me because I hated me. And there was just no way I was going to do that. Now, later on, I lived in close quarters with other women with bars against my will and all, you know, they got to know me really well. But that was against, you know, that was not my choice. And so I ended up going to a technical school because I thought that if I could just get a job, if I could just get the money, if I could just get the guy, if I could just get that, whatever that might be, that everything will be okay. And so I got the job, and I ended up with a guy. We don't have enough time to talk about him tonight, but in the midst of that, I got the new job. I got the guy, and it was great. I worked midnights, and the bar opened at 7 a.m. So you could literally get off work and go right to the bar at 7 a.m. and all the steel workers were there. It was great. But there was something missing, and I knew that there was something missing. And so I decided that it had to be Pennsylvania. And if you've lived in Pennsylvania in the wintertime, you would probably agree with me. So I decided to move, and it was a very quick, when I decide that I'm going to do something, it's quick, I put out resumes, and 3 weeks later, as soon as somebody called back and said, yeah, we'll take you, I loaded up a U-Haul and I left to move to North Carolina. And I remember my parents I can still see my mom's face. Like, what are you doing? It was like, zoom, she's out. And so I moved to North Carolina, and things were well for a little while. I got a job, and I got another house, and more car, a newer car. And then I got pregnant, and I thought, man, this is it. This is it. I'm going to be okay now. And I quit drinking, and I quit smoking, and I ate healthy foods. And, this was it. I knew that this was the cure. And then I ended up miscarrying that baby, and it wrecked me. It absolutely wrecked me, and so I'm back to the drinking, and I decided that I didn't want to live in North Carolina anymore because that wasn't working for me. So I moved back to Pennsylvania, and then I ended up I convinced my boss that I needed to live. I had a territory. I was a sales rep, and I had a territory, and Virginia Beach was part of my territory. So I thought I absolutely needed to move to the beach. That's the plan. That's what we're going to do. And so I convinced him of that, and my boss said, okay. And so my company moves me to Virginia Beach. And if you were to look at my life from the outside, after the miscarriage, people saw how sad I was, but then I'm excelling at work. So people think that I'm doing okay. I'm making a lot of money. I've got all this stuff. I'm flying from city to city. I don't really have anybody in my life at this time. I have that ex-husband number one, but husband number one with me. And that's about it. And he likes to drink like I like to drink, and he likes to do other non-conference approved dry goods like I do too. So we're a great couple, a great match. If you had asked people if I was doing well, they would have said yes, because I have this character that I give to other people, to my parents, to anybody else, the illusion that I'm doing well, real flashy. But I couldn't hold on to it for very long. There was, while I was there in Virginia Beach, I got pregnant again, and I was so excited, and this time though, alcohol has taken over to the fact that I can't stop this time. I can't stop. But I want this baby, and I can't stop. And I have a husband that says, you're not having this child. You're not going to have it. If you don't terminate this pregnancy, you're completely cut off. And I would love to tell you that I could have said, okay, but alcohol had me. Alcohol absolutely had me. And to terminate that pregnancy for me went against everything that I had ever believed in. And, but he drove me to the clinic, and I did the one thing that I said I would never do. And it was the secret that I was going to take with me, to the end of time. No one's ever going to know about this, because I felt such shame and guilt over it. And so my job's starting to suffer, and there was a time that I couldn't get off the couch. I wasn't going to go to work. So I had the idea that I called my boss, and I told him that the plane had been canceled. The flight's canceled. Flights are canceled all the time. It's not a big deal, right? So I tell him it's canceled. I believe that it's canceled now, even though it's not, but I believe that it's canceled. 10 minutes later, he called me to call me on my, Heidi, the flight wasn't canceled. And in that 10 minutes, I have convinced myself that it was, and I argued with him for the next 20 minutes that he was wrong. He looked up the wrong flight. I mean, that's how delusional my head would be. I'll tell myself a story, and then it's absolutely true. It's this perception of mine, I ended up getting fired from that job. A couple other things happened, and I get fired from that job. I know that's a big surprise, right? And it took me a long time to say I got fired. My ego would not let me say that. I would have told you that Medicare reimbursements had lessened and they no longer needed my position. I have great stories. And so I didn't think about getting another job. Like, that never crossed my mind. I knew I wasn't gonna, I didn't want to work. I mean, I couldn't work 9 to 5. Like, I'm not even good at an hour at a time. Like, there's no way. And so I had to figure out what to do. And in that company that I worked for, they had given me some stock when I started there. There was a kind of a startup company in medical equipment. The medical equipment skyrocketed and I was fully vested in the stock. And so I had this stock and I thought, well, I could just cash it in and I'll get some money and I'll continue to live, in this high class way that I've been living. I live at the beach. I don't go to the beach. I only go to the liquor store, to the hood, and I come and I shut all the curtains, and I chain smoke. That's my life. And it's the only life that I know. And that's what I want to do. And so I go through that money really quick, and in this period of time, I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to, I'm done. I'm done playing in the actor. I'm not okay. And I don't want to talk to anybody, not even my parents. My mom would call and leave messages and say things like, if you don't call me back, I'm going to have the state police come to your house to see if you're alive or dead. And I would be livid because how dare you send the cops to my house? It was just absolute craziness, and I went through that money. It's amazing how quickly you can go through money when that's all that you do, and so I'm out of money and I don't know what to do. My husband doesn't work either. Like I said, we like to drink and we like to do other things. That's all we do. And so it was tax season and I thought I would go ahead and do my taxes, get a tax return, and then I would figure it out. Like, you ever been like that? Like if I can just get this right now, I'll figure it out. Like, I'm good at one day at a time when I'm drinking. Like, I'm good at one drink at a time. Like, I'm good. I'm real good at it. So I go to file my taxes and I find out that if you cash in stock, you're supposed to pay taxes. Did you guys know that? I didn't know. I did not know. And so I find out I was supposed to pay taxes, $100,000, mind you, of taxes. And so I was like, I didn't file my taxes that year because, would you? There's no way. And so I remember I called my parents, and now this is the person who doesn't, I don't answer the phone when they call, but now I call and I say, can I come home? And I have great parents. Like, they don't have a great daughter, but I have great parents. And they said, yes, on 2 conditions. 1, you need to get a job, like work for a living. And 2, you need to get sober. And I was like, okay. And I thought that I could control it enough that they would think that I was okay. And I could get a job and I could be a part of my family and I could just be over this nonsense. Like, it would just, okay, it's going to be different this time. So I move home and I didn't get completely sober because I can't. Like, I'm physically incapable, and me without something separating me from me is just, that's never going to happen. Like, even today, that's not going to happen. I need to have, something else between me and me. And so I got 2 jobs just to make up for it because I like to play the best daughter. And one of those jobs I had to drive every day back and forth on an interstate. And I was driving home on October 15th, 2007, and I saw a tractor trailer and a motorcycle. I thought it was really weird that they were pulled over where they were. And then I felt something hit the front of my dad's truck. And so I pulled over. I thought it was like the semi mirror or something. And when I got out, there was a guy standing there and he said, you just hit somebody. And I looked and there was a man laying beside the road, and I ran over and I started to do CPR, even though I knew he was dead. I worked in a trauma center. I knew he was dead. And I tried to do CPR and because I didn't know what else to do. And in my head, I'm so selfish. I'm so self-centered. All I keep hearing in my head is, I can't believe this is my life. I can't believe this is my life. Oh my God, this is awful. And this chatter's just nonstop. And the state police came and he said, we got to find out who did this because I don't look like the person that would have done what would just happen. And I said the only honest thing I told him that night, which it was me. And so they put me in the front seat of the police car, which is crazy, I'd never been in a police car before, although I should have been many, many times. They took me to the hospital for blood tests. They took me to the state police department, and they let me go home that night. They did not charge me. It took them another year to bring those charges. And then that next year, it was just, if I had no charges. And then in the next 8 months, I had about a list of charges that were this big. I look back now and I think it was, God was saying to me, you can stop. Like, you can stop at any time, like stop. But I couldn't. I could not stop. Every time that I would even, when I would wake up right before I took that first drink or I took that first anything, it's the chatter in my head that it wouldn't stop. And I had to have something to stop it. And so eventually, May of that following year, I woke up and it was May 7th, the day after my birthday. I only remember that because it was the day after my birthday. And I'm in all orange. It took me a long time to wear orange, by the way. I'm in all orange and I see these bars and I think I'm having a bad dream and I need to, can't wake up. You ever have that? Like, you can't wake up from the dream. Turns out it wasn't a dream, and I'm in the county jail. And so I go over to the magistrate, they do the charges or whatever, and they tell me it's a $200 bail to get out because all my charges hadn't quite caught up to each other yet. And I remember calling my mom and telling her, it's $200 to get me out. Can you come get me out of jail? And her response was, you're in jail? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna sleep tonight. I'll see you. I love you. I love you so much. I'll see you at visiting times. And I thought, what a fill in the blank, right? Like, how dare she? I didn't know that my parents hadn't slept in a decade. I didn't know that every time that the phone rang, that their heart rate would automatically go up because they were afraid that somebody was calling to tell them that their daughter was dead. I didn't know the tornado that I was and the people that loved me. I mean, it was awful. So I was in that jail for 34 days and I hadn't been sober for 34 days in a row in a really, really long time. I mean, I was super sick. It was awful. But by the end of 34 days, I was as physically sober as I am right now, standing here. I'd gotten to the part that I could kind of sleep a little bit. I was okay, not good, but I was okay. And I had somebody that came and bailed me out of that jail. And you want to hear how horrible I am? My parents had made an appointment like for visiting because you had to tell them you were coming to come see me. And I didn't even have the decency to call them to tell them I got bailed out. And they come to visit me and I'm not there. Like, that's the kind of daughter they have, So I get out and I thought, I got this, well, I'll figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. I'm not gonna go overboard like I have in the past. I'm gonna figure this out. It'll eventually be okay. And I get through those doors, and then another thought came to my mind, and it said, 34 days is a long time. That's a lot. You should really celebrate that you were able to do that for 34 days. I know what we can have. And I'm back up to the races. And I was living with my parents at the time, so I end up back at their house, which is, crazy. And they said, if you can't get sober, you can't live here anymore. We're not going to watch you kill yourself. And I said, that's fine. I don't want to live here anyway. And I got a tent and I moved to the woods. Thinking, I'm telling you, it's, so we moved to the woods and then we met a woman that liked to drink like we like to drink, like do the other stuff that we like to do. And she had a nice house and she let us live there. And so we moved in with her and I got to the point where, there was one day, it was June 10th, 2009, and I was walking through the woods because I love the woods. Like, we walked today and I told Lisa, I'm like, I don't know how anybody could walk through these woods and not feel that there's not a presence of God. I don't know how you can. And that's been for me my entire life. If I'm in nature, I can feel that presence of a higher power. So I'm walking through the woods and I can feel this presence, and I'm realizing that chatter in my head never stops. It doesn't matter how much I drink. It doesn't matter how loaded I am. It just goes on and on and on, and I can't take it anymore. I don't know how to live life with alcohol. I don't know how to live life without it. I just want out. Just take me, God, please. Look at all the harm I've done. Just get rid of me. It's time. Take me. And then nothing happened. So now I'm mad at God, right? Like, one honest prayer, and now I'm not, it's not the, please get me out of it. Like, this is literally take me. And so I go home, and a couple hours later, there was a loud knock on the door. And it was my probation officer. Now, I hadn't really been sentenced yet, but they knew I was going to need one, so they gave me one early. And she was coming to visit. She was doing some tests, and I told her no need to do the test, and she ended up taking me off to the county jail. She did take me. She took me away, and I haven't had a drink or anything else since then. And I look back, and I think I did ask God to take me. I mean, not exactly what I was thinking, but... And so I ended up at the county jail, and I met this chaplain, and he knew the Oxford group steps, and I started working those Oxford group steps with him, and they ended up letting me out on house arrest, and I got to come to you. I got to come to Alcoholics Anonymous, which was amazing for me. I was afraid. I was afraid to come because I was afraid of people, and I didn't know what to think. In my first meeting, there was a guy there, an old timer. I still text him every day. We're a close knit group. There's only 5 meetings in my town, so we're close, right? And he had told me to keep coming back, and I felt like nobody had said that to me in a really long time. Truth is, my parents did let me keep coming back, but other people not so much. I thought people had abandoned me, but through the process of inventory, what I found is I had abandoned every friend that I'd ever known, that I would steal from them, or I'd show up loaded when I shouldn't be loaded. And then I couldn't talk to them again because I was so embarrassed. And so he gave me the number of 2 women, and I ended up calling those women. And one of those women said, I'll take you to meetings. And she taught me about AA. She taught me about greeting people. She taught me about, our etiquette. She taught me, we started working those steps together. And so I ended up asking her to be my sponsor, which, if you don't think God doesn't have a sense of humor, I was on house arrest and she was a corrections officer, which is, I didn't know. I go to the jails and I tell them that story. They get mad, and I tell them, ask somebody if they've worked the 12 steps, and then let the follow-up question be, have you ever worked in corrections? So you've been properly armed with what to ask somebody as a sponsor. And so we started working those steps. All those charges that I had pleaded not guilty to because I'm me, right? It's not guilty. It's not my fault. And I hang out with you guys for a couple months, and I go back and I'm guilty. I changed the plea to guilty because I am. I'm absolutely guilty. I was guilty of more things than I got caught for. And so I'm going through the sentencing process, and I was getting sentenced for that vehicular homicide, DUI. And the man was a truck driver that lived in the state of Maryland. And so his family had come for my sentencing, and I knew that they would be there. And I knew that our book said that we make direct amends to the people that we have harmed. And so my sponsor and I came up with a letter. And when it was time for sentencing, I turned to that man's family and I told them that, I was so sorry. And I knew that sorry wasn't even the right word, but that if there was anything that I could do, that I would do it, that I would tell this story anywhere at any time, so that maybe somebody else wouldn't feel the suffering that I had brought upon them. And I'm not saying they ran up and hugged me, but what did happen is the judge asked them if he could separate the charges. So instead of getting a 3-year mandatory state penitentiary sentence, I ended up getting 10 to 24 months in a county jail, which I didn't deserve. If you ask me, I should still be in a prison somewhere. But that's grace. Our book says that God doesn't make too hard terms for those who seek him. And I really feel like I experienced that day. And so I end up in county jail, and that husband that I was with, he didn't understand why I was going to AA. He didn't even show up for the sentencing. And I had intuitively knew that if I didn't separate myself from him, that when I got out, I'd be back to the same stuff. And so I filed for divorce. And so I ended up on work release while I'm in jail, and I get out, I'm still on this work release job, and I see this guy, and he's praying over his lunch. And I thought, that's really special. That's the kind of guy that I need to be with. And so on work release, I meet husband number 2. And I remember my sponsor said, let's do an inventory of why you can't be alone. You just got divorced. Why are you running into another relationship? Let's talk about this. And I said, that's great. I'll write the inventory. I'll call you right back. 3 months later, I called her and I told her that I was pregnant and he had moved in. I mean, I don't recommend, if you're new, don't do what I did, because you're going to hear what happens next. And so we have this beautiful baby girl, and she's grown up in AA. Like, she's come to AA meetings since before she was born. She has heard these principles. She has practiced them. I mean, she's a freshman in high school now, which is just beyond my belief, but she has this AA sense about her. Here, just quick story. She had some friends she was hanging out with. There was 3 of them, and they were all hanging out. And then the other 2 decided they were going to have a sleepover, and they didn't invite my daughter in with the sleepover. And so my daughter came home, and she was upset telling me about that. And I was like, yeah, I know what that's. I've had women in AA do that to me. Let's talk, I knew exactly how to help her. And so as she's talking to me, she says, you know what, Mom? I bet they just wanted to have a sleepover. It didn't even have anything to do with me. I'm going to go upstairs. I'll talk to you later. And I was like, I had to do inventory, and I had to call my sponsor, and I'm still praying for a couple of those women. What is going on? But that's what you guys have done for my daughter, and I appreciate it, So anyway, life is good. We're married, and I go back to school. I'm working, he's working, and then I get pregnant again. And this was called a high-risk pregnancy. I was actually told when I had her that I shouldn't have another baby, and but I did it anyway, because if you've listened thus far, you'll notice that I do whatever I want anyway. And so I would go to my home group, and it was a 12 and 12 unless somebody had a problem relating to alcoholism. And I would raise my hand more frequently than not. And I would say, could we please talk about fear? Because I was so afraid. I was so afraid. Fear was just, it was on me, something's going to happen. And you guys would remind me that there's some great prayers in the big book. And they say things like, we ask God to remove our fear, that he would remind us who he would have us to be, be. And I would take that and I would hold on to it. And you would tell me to stay in today, which I thought was crazy, because I'm already in tomorrow. Like every fear I have is in tomorrow, and I'm already in tomorrow or next week or next, I don't know how to stay in today. But I kept trying, because it says, may you find God now. You only find God right now in the present moment. But I had a hard time with that back then. And so on February 16, 2013, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. And I was holding that baby boy 8 hours later as he died in my arms. And I'll tell you, but thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous, I got to be his mom. I got to sing to him. I got to pray with him. And all that little boy knows is love. That's all he's ever known is love. And a little while later, you guys taught me about meditation, and I saw him in meditation. And I know where he is, and I know where I'm going, and I'm okay with that. But at the time, that was not the case, and it was pretty bad. Grief was awful. I ended up going to grief counseling, and I don't come from a family that's like a counseling kind of family. We're more of a suck it up buttercup kind of family. But I went to grief counseling, and it was great for grief, but there's a fine line between grief and self-pity. And what had happened is, while I was in that grief counseling, my husband, number 2, he had not come all the way into Alcoholics Anonymous. He was in AA, but he wasn't in AA, if you get my drift. And so he went back to work, and he was working a lot, because that's all he just needed to keep busy. Like it was just a lot for him. And so he was working a lot, and he got tired at work one day, and somebody offered him something to help him stay awake, and he was back off to the races. And I was so mad at him. Like, how dare he? How dare he do that to me, right? Talk about selfish and self-centered. And I was awful to live with. I was just so awful. And I remember finally doing some inventory on it. And what I realized is, I believed the lie that his love for me and our daughter should have been greater than that pool of whatever he was taking. And what I realized is that I loved my parents so much, but alcohol sang to me. I love that baby that I terminated. And alcohol is stronger than love. And when I was able to see that, I was no longer mad at him. I was more sad. And if I'm sad, I can be tolerant and I can be loving, but it was tumultuous. Like, I would move out and I would come back, and I'd move out and I would come back. And one of the times that we were getting along, we decided to go on vacation, and we were going to go to Nags Head, North Carolina, which you have to drive through Virginia to get there. And as we're driving through Norfolk, that's where I'd had that termination. Now, I'll tell you, and I love the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. We can make amends to people that are no longer with us. We can write letters. And that's what I had done. I'd made amends to that child. And I thought I was okay with it. I will say, after my son died, there was a moment that I thought, this happened because of this. And then I realized I don't have a God like that. I don't have a vengeful God. And so anyway, we're driving and I have all these memories come back and I start crying. Like I'm sobbing. And I got my daughter in the back seat. I think she was like 3 at the time. And she's like, Mom, what's wrong? And I have to pull myself together. And so I come up from it and I'm like wiping the tears off my eyes. And I look up and there's a billboard along the highway, huge letters that says, "You're forgiven." And it was pretty powerful, Our marriage didn't last though. He ended up going back out and I ended up filing for divorce because I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't. And so I filed for divorce and now I'm a single mom and I'm working, I work at a doctor's office. I'm cleaning houses. I'm working 3 jobs. I mean, it's a lot, and I don't drive because I don't have a driver's license. And so I always tell newcomers that too. They're always like, "Oh, I don't have a license for like the next 60 days. I can't get to meetings." And I was like, try 13 years, like 60 days, humility, right? It taught me humility. I had to ask for help. And I'm not real good at that. So it really taught me how to do that. But I was on this self-pity kick and I didn't even know it. Like I did not even know it. Thank you. And so I was at my home group one night and I don't know what I said, but it was something I'm sure filled with self-pity and selfishness and self-centeredness because somebody pulled me aside and they said, there's some prayers in the big book. You should try them. And I remember thinking, I went to seminary. I know how to pray. Thank you very much. I didn't say that out loud though. So I went home and I found my big book and there are some prayers on page 86. And they said, we ask God to direct our thoughts in the morning. I'm paraphrasing. We ask that it be divorced from self-pity. And that's what I needed. And I didn't even know that I needed it. And so I did those prayers. I still do those prayers in the morning. It says upon awakening, before I get out of bed, that's, before I open my eyes, I do those prayers. And then it had some nightly reflection things to do. And I did that too. And in that week, something happened to me, something like, I don't think that there's ever a time that God doesn't want to connect with me, that God doesn't want me to feel that power and that presence, but there's resentment and self-pity and dishonesty and selfishness. Like it all just piles up and like clogs the channel. And so I started doing that stuff and the channel started to open and I started to feel that power again. And it was like, we were talking, when I drank, I wanted more. Like I wanted more. I need more of that power. I love the effect produced by God. I loved it. So I go back to the home group. I'm like, where did you find this stuff? How did that happen? And I love that we tape things because that's our legacy. And I heard somebody go through the big book line through line. And so I did that too. I started on the title page and just went line by line and I went back through the steps that way and my life completely changed. I had a problem with my neck. I couldn't move my neck from the left to the right for about 2 years. And they found out that I needed surgery, which I thought was a great idea because that's, I like anesthetic. I thought it was great. I go back to the home group to let them know because that's what I'd been taught. You tell the home group. My home group knows what's going on in my life. And one of the home group members looked at me and he said, "Heidi, did you have any unmade amends?" And I was like, "No, I made all my amends except for the IRS. And you can't possibly want me to call the IRS because Wesley Snipes went to jail for less than I owe. And I'm not calling them. I'm not going to federal prison." And he said, I talked that fast too. And he looked at me and he said, "How free do you want to be?" And then he dismissed me and walked away. And I thought, no way, buddy. I'll call them. I'll go to federal prison. My daughter will grow up without parents because of you. It'll be your fault. And it's my perception. So I ended up calling them and I told them that I could make $20 a month payments because that's all I had. I mean, I did $20 a month for me at that point in my life was a lot of money. And they told me that they'd have to look into it. And 2 weeks later, I ended up getting in the mail, I got my final divorce papers from my kid's dad. And I got a letter from the IRS that said, "We'll take your money. We'll take your $20 a month. We'll even send you an envelope." And I remember going to a meeting and telling them about this and just thinking about that grace, because I didn't have a bank account. I couldn't own anything, right? Like it was just completely life-changing to be able to start making $20 a month payments. And I got home and I put my pajamas on and I could move my neck for the first time in 2 years. So I called that home group member because I'm like, "You're not going to believe this." And he's like, "Yeah, Heidi, there's a big difference between making all of your amends and all but one of your amends. It's a promise in the big book. When the spiritual malady is overcome, so is the physical and the mental." Now, mind you, I just got my divorce papers. And so I thought to myself, I should marry him because he's really cute and he's smart, he's in the program, he's doing good. And it did take me a couple years to figure, to convince him that it was the right thing to do, but we are happily married today. And I did do that. Did I tell you I did the inventory? I don't think I did. So I did the inventory on why I had this fear, why I thought I had a fear of being alone, right? But what had happened is I don't have a fear of being alone. I have a fear of what I think you think of me if I don't have a guy beside me or the right car or the right. I was talking to Lisa before I came out here. I was afraid I wouldn't have the right boots to wear for you guys because that's what you care about. Like just that crazy mind stuff, right? But what you guys remind me and continue to remind me is that my identity is in the fact that I am God's child, that he is the Father and I am his beloved child, period. That's it. That's all. And when I remember that, I'm pretty good, and so we've abandoned ourselves to help other people. One of the things that we did is we sold everything we owned and we moved to Los Angeles in 2019 because I wanted to work for a little place called the Midnight Mission down on Skid Row. I ended up getting a job there on March 4th of 2020. I don't know if you guys remember 2020, but I was a community events coordinator that never communicated anything. Like I love to write, and I had been writing my entire life. My boss knew that, and so she started giving me things to write, and so I started writing, and it worked out pretty great. Our lease was up, and we weren't really sure what we were going to do, and we both prayed, and we felt like God said, "Go home." My mom had been sick, and my daughter was 9, and she didn't have any friends because schools were shut down, and so we ended up moving back to Pennsylvania. Thank you. And I was really upset about that because, I've made it very clear I don't like to live in Pennsylvania, right? And I remember talking to my sponsor and she said, there's 12 steps down to humility. Your life is no longer your own. You do what's best for your family. Come home. I was like, and I took the direction. And so I got home and AA wasn't the same when I got home. I got to continue to work for the Midnight Mission. That was the point of that story. Sorry, I sidetracked. But it wasn't the same. Yes, COVID changed things. I understand that, but I don't know that it was that. It was me. I was different. I remember saying, I don't feel like I'm a part of AA here. And that sweet husband of mine said, well, maybe that's because you're not. And he was right. I wasn't really going to meetings in my hometown. I was going out of town. And so I buckled down and I started going to meetings in my town. I was suffering from that self-pity really. And so I started praying for, people to help. And I got an opportunity to start a meeting at a rehab. And so I go to the rehab every week and we go through the big book. And it's just such a blessing. Rarely do they call when they get out, but the ones that do, it's just amazing to watch the lights come on. I was talking about the IRS. I don't know, it was last year or the year before. I'm tired. We get this letter from the IRS that said, call us, we have $300. And I thought this is weird. And so we ended up calling them and they said, please stop sending us $20 a month. And I was like, I owe you a lot of money. And they said, your debt has been paid. Where do you want us to send this money to? And my debt was completely paid. I ended up getting that driver's license back 4 years early. I had a little part-time job and a guy knew the state representative and he advocated for me to get my license back because he said, you've paid your debt to society and you're doing the right thing. And the crazy thing about that is that guy's dad was killed when he was 2 years old by a drunk driver and he grew up without a dad. The things that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me, the things that you guys have done, the relationship that I have with my parents today, when they need help, they call me. They know that they can depend on me. My dad asked me to speak on his behalf at a banquet that was being given for him. And I'll tell you, I never knew that my dad was proud of me. And if you would have heard him, introduce me as the speaker, it was just, it was amazing. You give me the tools to live this life that I never thought I could live. I know that I am loved today. I know that I'm loved because every time I serve somebody else is when I feel, it's almost like I feel love as I give love. I always wanted to fit in, and what you guys taught me through the steps and through being here is that I don't have to fit in anywhere, but that I can be who God created me to be and I can belong. And so I want to thank you for letting me feel love and belonging tonight.